The moment my father looked me in the eyes and said, "If you marry that failure, don't expect this family to stand beside you," I realized I had already lost more than my wedding. My name is Whitley Carter, and 3 hours before I was supposed to walk down the aisle, my own family decided that humiliating my fiancé was more important than celebrating my future. They called Daniel a nobody, a man with no future, a man who could never give me the life they believed I deserved. What none of them knew was that Daniel had spent years hiding the truth, not because he was ashamed of who he was, but because he wanted to be loved for the man he was, not for the money attached to his name. If only my family had known what was about to happen. If only they had understood why a line of identical black SUVs was already making its way toward the church. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It all started 6 years earlier when I met Daniel in a small neighborhood bookstore. He wasn't wearing an expensive watch. He didn't drive a luxury car. He smiled, apologized after accidentally knocking a novel off the shelf, and spent 20 minutes helping me find the book I had been searching for. That simple act of kindness turned into coffee. Coffee turned into long conversations. Long conversations became love. Daniel listened when I spoke. He remembered the little things. He showed up when everyone else disappeared. To me, that mattered more than any paycheck. To my family, it meant absolutely nothing. The moment they learned he worked at a small technology company, the judgment began. That's all he does? How will he provide for you? You've wasted your education. Every holiday dinner became another opportunity for them to embarrass him. Daniel never argued. He never defended himself. He simply smiled, changed the subject, and treated everyone with respect, even the people who mocked him. Sometimes I asked why he stayed so calm. He would squeeze my hand and quietly say, "People reveal themselves when they think someone has nothing to offer. Let them." At the time, I thought he was just trying to avoid conflict. I had no idea those words carried a meaning far deeper than I could imagine. Then came our wedding day. Instead of helping me get ready, my mother stormed into the bridal suite holding a folded piece of paper. She tossed it onto the table. "If you still have any sense left," she said coldly, "sign this and walk away before it's too late." I unfolded the paper with shaking hands. It wasn't a wedding card. It wasn't a blessing. It was a document demanding that I cancel my wedding immediately. And before I could even process what I was reading, someone burst through the church doors with panic written across their face. "They're here. They're actually here." I looked toward the entrance, completely confused. Then I heard the distant sound of engines growing louder. I rushed toward the church entrance, my wedding dress gathered in my hands, while guests whispered nervously around me. Outside, my father was already standing on the front steps with a smug expression. "I told everyone this would happen," he laughed loudly. "Daniel probably borrowed money from the wrong people. Looks like they're here to collect." My brother Ethan pulled out his phone, eager to record what he thought would become the family's favorite story for years. "Imagine getting arrested on your own wedding day," he said, shaking his head with a grin. Laughter spread through the crowd. Only Daniel remained calm. He stood quietly near the altar, straightening the sleeve of his suit as though nothing unusual was happening. I walked over to him. "Daniel," I whispered. "What's going on? Who are they?" He looked into my eyes and gave me the same reassuring smile I'd seen countless times before. "No matter what happens in the next few minutes," he said softly, "promise me you'll trust me." I wanted answers. Instead, I nodded. The sound of engines grew louder until a convoy of sleek black SUVs slowly turned into the church driveway. One, then another, then another. People stopped talking. Even the musicians outside froze. The vehicles parked in a perfect line, each one cleaner and more expensive than the last. The church parking lot fell completely silent. My mother grabbed my arm. "Whitley," she whispered nervously, "tell your fiancé to leave. Whatever trouble he's in, we don't want to be part of it." Daniel didn't move. He simply adjusted his tie and waited. Then the first SUV door opened. A man in an elegant tailored suit stepped out. Behind him came another. Then another. Within seconds, more than 20 sharply dressed men and women had formed an orderly line. None of them looked angry. None of them looked like debt collectors. They looked like executives. Each one carried a small black gift box wrapped with a silver ribbon. The guests exchanged confused glances. "Who are these people?" Someone whispered. "I've never seen anything like this." My father folded his arms confidently. "They're probably pretending to be important," he scoffed. "This is just another desperate stunt." Daniel said nothing. Then something happened that made my heart skip a beat. Every single visitor turned toward him, and at exactly the same moment, they lowered their heads in respectful greeting. The church became so quiet that you could hear the wind moving through the trees. My brother slowly lowered his phone. The smile disappeared from my father's face. My mother looked at me with wide, frightened eyes, and before anyone could say a word, one final black SUV rolled into the parking lot. Unlike the others, it flew the flag of one of the largest technology companies in America. When the driver opened the rear door, every executive standing outside instinctively stepped aside. Whoever was inside was clearly the person everyone had been waiting for. Every eye in the church parking lot locked onto the final black SUV. For a few seconds, no one moved. Even the birds seemed to fall silent. Then the rear door opened. A distinguished man in his early 60s stepped out, wearing a perfectly tailored navy suit. Behind him came two assistants carrying leather portfolios, followed by several executives. I recognized from magazine covers but had never imagined seeing in person. A wave of whispers swept through the crowd. "Isn't that? It can't be. Oh my God. That's him." My father frowned, clearly confused. "I don't know who these people think they are," he muttered. "This has nothing to do with Daniel." The distinguished gentleman ignored everyone else. He walked straight toward my husband. Daniel took one step forward. The man smiled warmly and extended his hand. "Congratulations, Mr. Brooks," he said. "We're honored to celebrate this special day with you." Then, to everyone's complete shock, he pulled Daniel into a respectful embrace. The executives standing behind him began applauding. One by one, they approached Daniel, shook his hand, and congratulated him on his marriage. Not one of them even looked at my family. My brother Ethan's face turned pale. What's happening?" he whispered. Before anyone could answer, one of the executives stepped toward the guests with a microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, "many of you know Daniel Brooks as a quiet, humble man." She paused, letting the silence grow heavier. "But very few know that he is also the founder and majority owner of Nexora Technologies, one of the fastest-growing artificial intelligence companies in the United States." Gasps echoed across the church. Someone dropped a glass. My mother covered her mouth. My father stared at Daniel as if he were looking at a complete stranger. The executive continued, "Mr. Brooks has spent years refusing interviews, avoiding publicity, and declining awards because he believed character should speak louder than wealth." She smiled. "He asked every executive here to keep his identity private, even from people who judged him." One after another, the executives presented. Daniel with elegant wedding, gifts and handwritten letters thanking him for changing their lives. One of them said, "You gave me my first opportunity when no one else believed in me." Another added, "My family has food on the table because of your generosity." A third executive smiled through tears. "You paid for my daughter's surgery without ever telling anyone." I looked at Daniel, my eyes filling with tears. For years, he had hidden not just his success, but his kindness. The same people who had called him a failure now couldn't even meet his eyes. Then Daniel slowly turned toward my family. His expression wasn't angry. It wasn't proud. It was simply calm. "My success was never the test," he said quietly. "The test was whether you could respect someone before knowing what they owned." No one answered, because deep down, they all knew they had already failed. Silence settled over the church. For the first time that day, my family had nothing to say. My father, who had spent years measuring people by their income and status, slowly lowered his head. My mother wiped away tears, realizing how cruel their words had been. Ethan stood frozen, unable to look. Daniel in the eyes after mocking him in front of our friends and relatives. Daniel didn't smile in victory. He didn't demand an apology. Instead, he walked over to me, gently took my hand and said, "The only opinion that ever mattered was yours." Tears filled my eyes. "I never doubted you," I whispered. "I know," he replied. "That's why today isn't about proving anyone wrong. It's about beginning our life together." The officiant, who had quietly watched everything unfold, smiled and invited everyone back inside. The ceremony continued. This time, the atmosphere was completely different. The same guests who had whispered insults earlier now stood respectfully as Daniel, and I walked toward the altar. The executives and employees who had arrived in the black SUVs took their seats quietly, never trying to steal the spotlight. They had come for one reason, to support someone who had spent years supporting others without asking for recognition. When the vows began, Daniel looked into my eyes. I promised to keep choosing kindness. Even when the world chooses judgment, he said. I smiled through my tears. And I promise to stand beside you, whether the world sees your worth or not. After we exchanged rings, the church erupted into applause. Outside, my father approached Daniel. I owe you an apology, he said sincerely. I judged you without knowing you. Daniel nodded politely. I appreciate that. But I hope the real lesson isn't about who I turned out to be. I hope it's that every person deserves respect before they've proven anything. My father quietly agreed. Years later, people still asked about the wedding where a line of black SUVs arrived unexpectedly. They assumed the story was about wealth. It wasn't. It was about character. Money revealed the truth, but kindness had always been Daniel's greatest success. And that was the reason I married him in the first place. If you want more interesting story videos on YouTube, so please don't forget to subscribe the channel. Thanks for watching.